In 2010, when I was fired from my job, I was really trying to seek, what am I going to do next? Like, what does my next step in my career look like? And I read a book, and in this book it says, if you turn your play into your work, you never have to work another day in your life. And I was like, I want to do that. And at that time, my play was YouTube. And I turned it into my work, and I realized that that statement is not true at all. You turn your play into your work, it becomes work. And then you need something else for play. So we're going to talk about that today, about their experiences and my experience, so that you guys and hopefully all of us can come up to a healthier, better spot with our art and what we're creating for other people in a way that's healthy for us, in our lives, and the people that we're serving.
Hey, welcome to the Video Creators Podcast. You know how you put a lot of time and energy into your YouTube channel for not nearly enough growth? Yeah, we get it. We're here today to help you change that. If you're trying to accelerate your channel's momentum, become more profitable, and change the lives of more people than ever before, today's episode will help you move forward with confidence. So far, our team is responsible for helping clients generate over 20 billion views on YouTube. And now to help you, here's the Video Creators team.
Hello, creators. How are you guys? It's great to see you again here for another Video Creators Podcast episode where every week we help you grow your YouTube channel, grow your business so you can spread your message, reach more people, and change their lives with the product, the service, with the content that you are creating. And today I'm joined by Ingrid, who's one of the YouTube strategists here on our team at Video Creators, and Lennon, who used to be a strategist here on our team, but moved on to bigger and better things.
Bring on the heat, isn't he?
Last December, really proud of Lennon. He launched out on his own business after working hard on that for a few years to get that going.
Yeah, you just couldn't make up for it, so you had to sell the company.
I'm like, Lennon's not here. This is not worth doing anymore. So. Tell us about what you do on YouTube or in your business and with art and creativity. Because you've kind of done this. You've taken what you're passionate about, helping artists and art, and make a living from it and turn it into something more valuable. And then we'll hear from you too, Ingrid, about that. But yeah, tell us real quick about your businesses.
Yeah, so I mean, I've sort of done that over and over in my life in different seasons, varying points of like, first it was music and I figured out how to make a living doing that. And then it was production and songwriting, and then to YouTube stuff, to now back to working with artists. And what we're really trying to do is help artists understand the value that they have as an individual first, and then understand like how do they communicate that value within the art they make? Because I believe that the artist is the art. I don't believe that the thing they make is the art. You know, this recorder could become something incredible with the right thought process around it. But that has everything to do with the experience of the artist as well as the experience of you, the viewer, you know, and these are many of the same concepts that we've discussed here at Video Creators, but we go way deeper into how can we balance our process of creation with the business. And a lot of that has to do with this like hairy world of the little monster that's telling us like, you know, this is work now. What are you going to do? You're not reaching your goals, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, when your play becomes your work and you start making money, like introducing money to the equation fundamentally changes your relationship with your art, with the thing that you're creating, for sure. It's good to have you back too.
It's good to be back.
If you guys are newer to the audience, we got Lennon used to be here, used to be a regular, and now it's like, oh,
you can scroll back a handful of episodes. You'll find me.
Yeah, exactly. Ingrid, you've been on YouTube for a long time,
yes.
and that was your play, that was your hobby, and now it's your work. So tell us about your story on YouTube. Brings us where we are here today.
So I have a mixed media channel, and mixed media art channel, where I would educate and really kind of help others to inspire them to take life that surrounds them and really kind of bring that into their art so that they're making cards to connect with people as well as with themselves. And that was really my mission, if you will, on YouTube for a long time until I met Video Creators. I got introduced to Video Creators and then just went down the strategy path, and now I have a new passion. Still have the art channel, still producing content there, but really more focusing on the work that I do with you.
How is your work prior to Video Creators and what you're doing on your YouTube channel? You think back like what it felt like to create and what it felt
yes.
like to make something and what your mind was thinking about and the
Okay.
emotion that was behind it, to now it's your job, not your mixed media art channel, but now you're on YouTube and it's like it's something you were very passionate about, and now here you are. The Video Creators kill your passion for YouTube.
The hard-hitting question.
That's what it comes down to.
Did not kill my passion for it before it, but it's interesting because when I first started the channel, I had a business off the platform. So my channel started as a driver to that. That was the
okay.
purpose behind it. So every piece of content I made was to educate around something with the end result of leading them to that. So the more I learned about the platform, and I learned that is not necessarily always a good thing to just drive people off the platform, I was creating content now from a place of service versus before everything had a purpose. And it was even though it was a passion, art has always been a passion of mine, my content, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but you guys get what I'm saying. Your content kind of becomes more planned and isn't as honest and organic.
It's more
Right?
like I have to make a video rather than I get to make a video.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So I was always creating with the camera on, and I almost forgot what it was like to create without a camera. And that was actually a big shift for me. Now being a strategist, it's interesting because I turn the camera off more now than I ever did before. So becoming a strategist and actually learning more about the platform and how to actually strategically do things has actually given me a little bit more freedom to know that it's okay to create and have this passion that I have
Yeah.
off camera. And then of course I create something amazing and I wish I had the camera on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I remember when I read that book and I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to turn my play into my work so I never have to work another day in my life. And for a few years, it felt really good. I mean, money was it was coming in and I was enjoying what I was doing, and all my mental energy was going towards like, what video am I going to make next and how can I make it better? And like, there's just a lot of energy into that. After 15 years of making videos, 4,500 videos across 9 different channels, it did not feel the same way. It felt more like, and actually, and this isn't a secret, I don't think, I stopped making videos like 2 years ago,
Yeah,
you know, and part of it was that I wasn't doing it from a place of creativity and joy. I was doing it now from a place of, I've got this momentum behind this business I need to maintain. I got to keep making videos. I've got employees now. I got a team. I've got, you know, a lifestyle that we're supporting and things. And that pressure, it turned from like joy to like work, then to like pressure, you know, and until my body just literally had a physical breakdown one night. I've shared that story before, and something had to give. Both the doctor and the therapist were both like, you got and you got to give something up, and making videos at that point was like the easiest thing for me to give. I still like making podcast episodes because it feels like we're connecting, like having a conversation, as opposed to like being quote on. You know, when you're on video, you gotta like, you're thinking about how's this going to be perceived, how do I deliver this in the most effective way possible, and like I'm like editing myself in my head while I go. I don't do that with podcasts, so I still have energy for this, but the YouTube content, I'm just like, sheesh, like it's not play anymore.
It's interesting that you say that because like even myself now having, you know, a full-time job in addition to the channel, because that's different. Before it was just the channel and just the business. I find that I'm making more live content, which is kind of like this. You know, you're having a conversation live with your audience.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of an easier lift, but at the same time, your approach to it is a little different, so you can have a little bit more fun versus being strategic and everything being crafted for content.
And then tell me about a time when you experience this with because you've had a lot of different creative backgrounds and endeavors and things. That once you introduce money to it and it started becoming a job, that your relationship just with your art just changed for good or for bad, really.
When I think about this idea of making money from our creative work, I think a lot of it in terms of like what the money actually creates. And I think it creates fear or obligation, as you mentioned, some sort of new expectation. The stakes raise in different places, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, like music, which is where I started, was all about escape. So I was able to get away from my, for lack of better terms, like my mom was an alcoholic. And so I was able to get away from that lifestyle. I was able to be with like a bunch of kids in the marching band that like supported me and I trusted, or if I was in a rock band, like I knew that those people were people that I could trust and I felt safe around them. And then as I started to make money from that, my life actually got better in many ways. My relationship with my wife grew, we had kids, all these things. So money was a piece of it, but it was also the emotional side of like, well, where does this fill me up right now?
Yeah.
And so that's something I'm actually just now starting to figure out again, which is what is my relationship to creativity?
Yeah. I read a good book by Daniel Pink, and the book called Drive. And the whole is like, why do the question he's asking is what motivates people to work? Like what drives them in what they do? Turns out the answer is not money. He gives a couple different examples in there that have really stood out to me. One is this guy who gets this horse and buggy, and because he just really loves just riding behind the horses through like this down the street that's just covered in big trees, and he just loves that feeling. And so he did that for a while. And someone else is like, "Hey, I want to do that too. Can I pay you to take me and my wife on a?" He's like, "Oh, sure." He's like, "This is great. Now I'm getting paid to do what I love, right?" And so he starts doing that, and then it turns into like this business, and then before long, he kind of just he doesn't like doing it anymore. He's like introducing money changed his relationship with what he was experiencing through something that used to bring him a lot of life and calm and peace. Now it's like it's different. It's like I have to instead of I get to, thing. Tells another story about this research that was done on art, like painting art, and there's a whole group of people who are commissioned to make art, and they were like the world-class best artists. And then these other people who are like not as talented necessarily, but they just made the art. Their art was just done out of passion and like I love this thing. And then at the auction, the art that went for more money, with people not knowing who created which art, the art that was commissioned went for less money than the art that was made by not as talented artists, but these artists had their heart in it. Even though does that make sense? Like, so it was like
totally.
It wasn't really about skill level, and the money actually fundamentally changed the art and the perceived value of the art, even though no one at the auction knew which ones were commissioned or who painted what. It was like this objective thing, right? And I'm like, I feel that, like on some level, like it just feels true that you create differently when it's your play than you do when it is like a thing you do because it's a revenue driver, right? Mm-hmm.
I totally relate to this because I feel like, and just from having created content for a long time, and then I make like a community video, something where there's not really any pressure. It's just a conversation, right? Mm-hmm. There's not as much tension, and I feel like when you are commissioned for something or there's money involved on some level, there's a self-imposed pressure, right? And I think that in art it makes sense, and I think that would tighten up strokes.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're just doing it for the love of it, you're loose. You don't care if you make a mistake. Mistakes actually make the art.
Yeah.
So that probably comes through on the joy side of it as the viewer is where that took me. Yeah.
One of the things he talks about in Drive, if you actually make more money, like your life doesn't really change, and you're like, Why? And I forget what the number was. It was somewhere around 70,000 a year, very average. I know it changes based on where you live and things like that, but the research is like after like $70,000-ish, your happiness doesn't go up. Your joy doesn't go up. Your quality of life in terms of how you feel about your life doesn't really change significantly, right? But the thing that does make a difference, though, that impacts how you feel about your work is the mission. This is my words, not Daniel's mission, his words, but the mission you have behind why you do what you do. And it's the thing that like, am I creating, like we're here at Vid Summit right now, and we just listened to a session with Ryan Trahan, and he's like, I don't make my content as like, what are people going to think about this and how well is it going to perform? He thinks of it as like, I'm creating a gift to give. I thought it stood out to me. I'm like, oh, that's a really good way of thinking about it. It's like, I am making something for you. You don't make a gift and hand it to someone and be like, now what do you think about me as a result of that, right?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's a good point. And so he had like a really clear mission in terms that he felt like was going to really help him achieve longevity, which is creating, what do you call it? Restorative work. Yeah. And like for us here at Video Creators, it's always been reach people, change lives. And that has been my passion and still is. That's like the through line that ties everything I've done for all of my different careers together, and even future careers now with vidIQ and other side projects I want to start personally as well. And I feel like that's the thing that actually allowed me to get to 15 years and 4,500. Like if that wasn't there, like as Matt Koval talked about in a previous episode here a few months ago now, I think, is that like the average creator lasts like 5-ish, maybe 7 years before they burn out. Mm-hmm. And that burnout is like a big problem. But I wonder if burnout would not be as big of an issue and it still will be. Like even my mission is really strong and I feel it deeply, but I have to express this differently now. So
I actually have a follow-up question for you.
Yeah, I have one too.
Yeah. Why don't you go first? Ladies first.
Well, it's kind of like, I was curious. It's actually for the both of you, because both of you have worked with hundreds of creators, thousands of creators, over the span of many years. Have you really seen, I mean, a lot of people come in on one path, one direction. That's what they think their drive is. But I feel like at some point, a lot of creators start to realize it kind of shift in a different way, right? And all of a sudden, the drive becomes completely different. And it feels like a lot of those that really make it on the platform long term, it's not so much about obviously they're trying to get something of it too, but it becomes more about serving than actually just creating for a specific purpose, like a business.
I remember YouTube days prior to there being a partner program, before there was money. Yeah. And it was just people creating to connect with each other and to build some sort of like community around something that they were passionate about. There was no one making money. There was no ad revenue coming into creators' pockets. I'm not saying the partner program was a mistake, because I certainly think it did a lot of good to help YouTube to grow. But I've said this before, and I think it's true that when money is your goal, like it could ruin your life.
Yeah.
But money makes for an amazing tool that you can use to further reach more people and change their lives. And so I feel that for myself that having that mission, having that why, that passion driving through it, and it hasn't, like, the money has enabled us to continue with that mission as opposed to becoming the goal of that mission. It's allowed me to hit 15 years, and that mission's still there. I just want to express it differently. But I love like hearing from like Ryan Trahan in a session where he's like, if I want to actually keep serving, in my words, but I think he would agree with this. If I want to keep serving people long term, and he was using the word longevity a lot on YouTube, and I don't want to burn out, and I want to keep going. He's like, one, I have this clear mission, restorative content, and then two, it was like I got to take a lot of breaks. And when you're driven by like money and things, I think it's hard to take those breaks because the more of it you have, the faster you get it, the more dopamine hits you get. Like that just becomes this all-consuming. It doesn't have to, and I'm not saying it's true for everyone listening, but I do think it's an easy trap to fall into, whether or not you have clearly identified that that's a trap in the first place. You know, I think it just
Well,
it
if
can
you're
happen.
if you're open to it, I'd like to flip and interview the schmoyer of Tim.
Let's do it.
Oh
For a
boy.
moment.
I'm open.
So, the thing that I heard you say was that the mission helps keep burnout at bay. But what we've also noticed is that it didn't stop it.
No.
So, what do you think is the difference in your approach from the first 3 years when it was like still really exciting to the last 3 years when it was like
Interesting.
not as exciting? What was missing for you in that time?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like it's turning to life coaching with Tim. I don't know the answer to that. What was missing?
So, well, if you want to ponder on that and answer, you don't have to answer. I think that this is a question that we don't ask ourselves enough, which is like when we give, our mission is external, but we forget about like what do we get, right? And we start to see the money as the return on our invest of time.
Yeah.
When in the beginning, the money wasn't our return of investment. And so we cannot lose that initial return of investment, and that return will shift over time, is what I believe. It's just
That's
like
true.
I was really into music for a long time, and then now I'm liking visual art, and like our seasons of life change, right?
That's what I was thinking too. Is like there's nothing wrong with quitting something and doing something
Right.
different.
Yeah.
You know, and so the goal here of like our
Pivoting,
conversation,
which we've talked about many
Yep.
times.
yeah, the goal isn't like how do I make sure I keep doing the same thing for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Like that's not the conversation.
I don't
that
think
have
that's
in my head.
sustainable.
No, the conversation I think that I'm interested more is like, how do I continue to serve people better long term, and how does introducing money to how I do that change how I do that and how long I can do that?
Yeah.
And I think, going forward, doing this stuff with vidIQ now, that's a totally new mountain to climb. I'm really excited about that. In the future, I'll be doing some life coaching stuff for creators, not so much on content strategy side, but more on like career development side. Like, hey, all right, I'm here. I've quote arrived. Now what? It's like, where do I go from here? Like another 1 million subscribers? Like, okay, but it's more of the same at that point, and helping them think through those types of life choices and decisions. So that's the skill I'm learning now. It's not a skill I currently have, but I'm thinking about that's what I want to do in the future. How do I start developing those skills? So I'm going through a lot of Tony Robbins stuff now, and I have a coach who's coaching me as I
Nice.
experiment on some guinea pig people who have told me it's okay if I ruin their lives. But so it's the same thing of reaching people and changing lives, but just in a different
The vehicle
way.
changed.
Yeah. So like years ago, it started like I want to do that inside a church, and so I was like, oh, here's a way I can reach people and change lives. So I became a youth pastor. Did that for 12 years. And then I was like, I think I can reach more people online and have a bigger impact. So I was a blogger for 2 years, and then switched over but I started making more video content on my blog. That blog was the most widely read blog in that industry. And now it's like, I haven't even logged into it in like years. And then I went to like YouTube, and now it's kind of like more podcasting. It's like life, so I don't think what we're trying to say is like, how do I make sure I never quit what I do? It's like, how do I keep serving people at a high caliber, in a way that is responsible, because you feel like, honestly, you start to feel stuck after a while. You got 10 employees and a bunch of clients, and it's like, like I have to keep doing, and it's also scary to pivot, which is another conversation. But
I think that's it.
I
Yeah.
feel like this is really interesting because I think this is applicable to both you and me as well. Like when I first started in my business, I was person to person. I also not just taught in person. I was in direct sales, so I actually sold product at the same time. I even then worked for a company in the same industry, the card, crafting industry, developing product, which helped people do the same thing that I was trying to do all along. And then the YouTube channel was going broader, reaching more people, helping them to do the thing that they love to do. And now I'm more to helping the content creators that actually have channels, even
yeah.
artists, to do that in a different sense. So it's kind of like the same thing, and
Yeah.
you're doing the same thing, from being a literal rock star to. I'm surprised that hasn't come up yet, but.
Well, let's not go there.
Yeah.
We don't need to go
Okay.
there. That's a wormhole.
But
International
an
touring drummer.
artist in that
London.
sense, to even what you're doing now in your own business, but first on YouTube, as a strategist, and then doing that. I mean, it's the same kind of. You're still doing the same thing, just in a different way.
The mission hasn't shifted too much.
Yeah.
I one of the things that when we're working with artists and like helping them try to figure that out, there's 3 things that I'm sort of trying to mold these together as we're talking through this, because I don't know that I've realized it until this point, but like the first thing is constantly asking that question of what do you need right now? So for me, one of my goals is like, how do I have a creative business that I love, that serves people really well, but makes me still feel like an artist? Like that's what I want. And for me, there's sort of 5 pillars to that. It starts with spirituality and mindfulness and like understanding who I am, what I need from my connection to God, how I'm connected to all of that. And then it goes into my creativity. Like that feeds into the creativity. And then that creativity feeds into my community. Who's there to support me? Who's there to like hold me accountable? Who's there to just, hey, I feel like crap today. Can you just tell me I did like something good? Can you point out something good that I'm like missing, And then the 4th thing is really about the business, but it has to go back. Like the business can't retract from any of those first pillars. And then it goes to inspiration and what inspires me to go back inward. And those things are cyclical. And so will those things change? I think some of them will. The things within those things change, right? But I've noticed that these are like my core premises that don't shift, but how I'm mindful, how I connect with God, how I'm creative, how I do my business, those things change, but the other stuff doesn't. And that's because I'm not good at it, but constantly trying to ask, like, what do I need? And I believe that when I know what I need and I'm getting refilled, it allows me to serve others better and operate from a zone of genius, which there's a very clear distinction between your zone of genius, which is very anti-normal work culture. Work culture says, go work hard, go bust your butt. And if you go bust your butt, like you're doing the work right. Zone of genius is actually the parts where you're like, this doesn't feel like work. And other people find this incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
Most of us operate from a zone of excellence where people say, hey, you're really good at this. I'd love to pay you. You're really good at driving this horse and buggy. I'd love to pay you. And you're like, well, this isn't really something that feeds me in that way. And so we have to be very mindful of those things. And it's a challenge. It's a constant tightrope. And if we're not going inward over and over, we lose sight of that.
Yeah. What advice would you guys have for someone who's like, hey, Tim, I turned my play into my work, and then my play now feels like work. And I think we've talked about one thing is like, get back to the why, the mission behind why you started this in the first place, and do whatever you need to do to get back to that point, even if it's like, I've done this before, you know this, well, both of you, because you were at Video Creators at the time. I took like a month and a half off.
Yeah.
Remember, like at that time a couple years ago, I'm like, something's got to change,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that would be my advice, like get back to the why and take some time off. And I know it's like, oh, it's easy for you to say, Tim. You have like a team, you're a solopreneur. I'd say like, you still got to do it. You got to, it doesn't matter if your business becomes successful if you inside just aren't, and you're just, so I don't know. But what would you two say?
I think that one of the things that you have done with the woodworking, for instance, is have that one thing and be protective of it. So like for me, it's cooking. I love to cook. I have always loved to cook. I've been a kitchen manager in a restaurant, but I've never gone the chef route because cooking is sacred to me. And the moment somebody pays me for that, it's not going
you
to
can
be
come cook
that.
for me for free.
Yeah.
Come on over.
Okay.
I won't even pay you for it.
It's not the same.
It still defeats the purpose.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that I have always been very protective of. And Michael does not understand how I could stand in the kitchen for 8 hours and work on a sauce and walk out of there loving it. He's like, I don't get it. I'm like, this is just my happy place.
Yeah.
I think that you need to have that thing. So if you've
Outside of the play that turned into work.
if you've turned that thing that you love, whether it be art, whether it be music, whatever that thing is, you know, Excel spreadsheets, I don't know, whatever that thing is that you've
that's not
turned
my
into
play.
a business, you need to find something that fills your cup also. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that what you said about creating space.
Yeah.
And creating space looks very different for everybody, right? But it does require slowing down and allowing yourself to like feel maybe lazy or feel like you're getting behind. Something, you know, I used to say when I was here a lot and still say a lot, which is like, sometimes we have to get behind to get ahead, you know, because if we don't let ourselves like find that space again, then we're not going to have a clear vision. We're like white knuckling everything. And then a question that my coach always asks me is like, okay, if this feels like work again, or this feels like something that's a burden or obligation of some kind, you know, the big line that she said was like, obligation is a breeding ground for resentment. And I have like thought about that almost every day. So how do you take away the obligation, and what can you do to make it fun and playful? And that feels so, again, anti-Western culture of like what work is supposed to be. But this is your business. Like, you are getting to choose how to run this thing your way. So why not use, like, you got into this for that reason, to like make your thing fun. And so what would make it fun for you again? And if when we ask those questions, then it requires trust. Like, you have to trust yourself enough to know that, like, hey, you got here in the first place, and if you slip, like, you can get back up and go again, because you've got to, so look for the evidence of where you've succeeded and always go back to that to say like, okay, I got all this stuff that says I was actually good at this, so I don't need to worry as much as I tend to worry.
I think that's the reason why I'm so excited about vidIQ and working there, is because I asked that question, like, what would make this fun again?
Yeah.
And the thing that I didn't like, it's kind of like, I hear this conversation with creators all the time, and so I'm kind of a little bit, not embarrassed, but like surprised maybe that I didn't apply it to myself, which is people who get the 1 million subs, they get the 2 million, they get the 5, the 10 million, and then it's like, well, what's the end game? Where are you going? Like, they're like, okay,
Yeah.
well, another 1 million subs, and so then they start getting disillusioned with what I'm doing. You know, it's like, and that's what happened. I think is at first it was like, how do I provide for my family? And then it was like, okay, well, how do I serve more people? Let's hire some people. And now here we are. At one point, you know, we had like 10 employees, and we had like a waiting list of like, I don't remember, 6 months waiting
Right,
list of like
yeah.
new clients that were paid in full, just waiting
Just
their
waiting,
turn.
yep.
And it's like, well, where does this go? Like, more strategists, more clients, bigger clients maybe.
Yeah.
And at some point, I started to feel like more of the same. It was like the challenge was it like, and I just wanted a new mountain to climb. That's how I made it interesting again.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, we're gonna do this for 2 million weekly creators instead of like 635 a year,
Yeah.
right, or something.
Yeah.
So I was like, and we're gonna do it with like tech and a whole other team of like engineers and artificial intelligence people. Like, it's gonna be like, okay, this feels like, and that's when I started getting re-energized and reinvigorated, is thinking about how can we take everything we've done and make it bigger.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what happened for me.
And
Like it's a really big shift, but I like can't not work on it in my head now because I'm so excited about it.
But again,
amazing.
it's your mission, reaching more people now
Yeah.
and changing more lives, right?
That's right. Yep. And that's
Yep.
the through line that made
The
it
through
like,
line
all
from
connect.
from day
Yeah.
one, and even before YouTube,
Yep.
even.
And that can
So,
happen, I think,
yeah.
at any level. You could be at 10 subscribers.
Yes.
And feel
Good
burnt
point.
out and exhausted and
Yeah.
like frustrated.
Absolutely.
And you can ask, well, what would make this fun again?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you've sucked all the fun out and only gone strategy. And that shows up in how we show up for people. And when we do it that way, like there's a reason that you go back and watch Ryan Trahan 3 years ago versus
Yeah.
now, like he was getting views, but there is a different a definite difference in how he connects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it has everything to do with that.
Yep.
Well, guys, I think that's my cue. Police are coming for me.
That's a good way to. I would love to hear from those of you who are watching this or listening to it, what your takeaways are, what was going through your head as you were hearing Ingrid, Lennon, and myself talk through some of this stuff. I don't feel like this is like the end of a conversation. This is
No.
one that I'm kind of like actively thinking about. And I would love to hear from you guys. You go to speakpipe.com/video creators. It's linked down in the show notes. And leave your voice messages of what you're thinking, what you're processing, questions that you have, or what you're going to do as a result of this. I'd love to do a follow-up episode and just react to what you guys are doing and your insights. One of the things I love about this community, and you guys who are here and the audience especially, is that there's so much more collective experience and wisdom in everyone who's like listening to this than there are like talking here on this show. And I want to tap into that. I want to learn from you. I want to hear from you. Like, you guys are amazing. Every time you guys reach out, you email, you leave voice messages. Like, even your questions are forcing me to think through things I hadn't really thought about before in that certain context, right? So it's good for me. So please reach out, speakpipe.com/video creators. Not sponsored. I just actually want to hear from you. Leave your voice messages, and let's do an episode here in the future where we can react and respond and learn from each other. Okay? So check it out. Thank you again for hanging out for another Video Creators Podcast episode, and we'll see you guys again next week. Bye.